When German POWs saw an American parade for the first time, they didn't understand what they were looking at. They heard it before they saw it. Drums first, then brass. Then the strange, rising sound of people cheering without orders. May 1945, Easton, Kansas. 36 German prisoners sat packed inside a transport truck with slatted wooden sides, their wrists numb from the vibration of the road. They'd been told they were being taken to a town fairground to help clean up after a victory celebration. To them, that meant propaganda, a loud ritual designed to humiliate the defeated. Private Karl Voss, 19, pressed his face to the slats. The air smelled different here, not like smoke and ruins, but like cut grass and gasoline and something sweet frying somewhere nearby. The truck slowed as it approached Main Street. Then the sound became visible, a parade. Not a military parade like the ones they knew. Not rows of stiff men marching to prove loyalty. This one moved like a river. Loose, bright, alive. The first thing Voss saw was color. Red, white, and blue everywhere, not just on flags, but on paper streamers taped to storefront windows, on tiny handmade banners children waved with sticky fingers. There were women in summer dresses, men in work caps, boys perched on fence rails, a man balancing a toddler on his shoulders as if nothing bad had ever happened in the world. The band came into view. Trumpets flashed in sunlight. Drums beat with confidence. Not the heavy, punishing rhythm of marching orders, but something almost playful. A tune Voss recognized from radio broadcasts that had always sounded distant and unreal. Here it was loud enough to shake his ribs. The truck rolled closer and then stopped unexpectedly near the curb while guards checked the route. And that's when the town saw the prisoners. Faces turned, conversations died mid-sentence. The band kept playing, but the air changed. The Germans braced for what they expected. Insults, spitting, stones, laughter. A public lesson in defeat. Instead, nothing happened. A teenage girl at the edge of the sidewalk stared for a long moment. Then she lifted her hand and gave a small wave. Not mocking, not proud, just acknowledgement. Like seeing strangers pass on a road. A second wave followed from a younger boy with freckles and a cap too big for his head. Then an older man holding a small flag tipped it slightly, not in salute, but like he was reminding himself to remain decent. No cheers, no curses, just a quiet restraint that felt more unsettling than hatred. The Germans exchanged glances. Voss felt his throat tighten. This was not what he had been trained to imagine. The truck moved again, and as it rolled past the parade route, the POWs watched fragments of American life flash by like scenes from a film. A float made of flowers. A banner reading, "Welcome Home." A woman handing lemonade to marching soldiers. Black and white troops moving in the same rhythm, side by side, not separated, not hidden. One prisoner muttered, bitter and confused, "They celebrate while the world is still burning." Another whispered, "Maybe they celebrate because they believe it won't burn forever." At the fairground, the guards unlatched the truck and handed out tools. The prisoners climbed down into sun and dust. They were told to collect trash, dismantle wooden stands, sweep sawdust from the walkways. From the distance, they could still hear the parade fading away, the brass echoing through the town's streets like a memory refusing to leave. They worked slowly, distracted. The celebration had carved a wound into their certainty. They had been taught America was a place of machines without soul, factories without family, money without meaning, yet what they saw was something else. A people confident enough to sing in public. A unity that didn't feel forced. By noon, The guards brought lunch in metal containers. Beans, bread, and something cold and sweet that tasted like fruit. The Americans ate from the same containers and then handed the rest over to the prisoners without ceremony. Not charity on display, just routine. Voss sat on the curb and ate, listening to the last ghost notes of the parade music. He realized something he couldn't yet put into words. The Americans didn't seem afraid of being watched. They didn't need to hide their joy from their enemies. That was a kind of power he had never seen. Back in camp that night, the men talked about the parade in low voices like it was forbidden knowledge. Some dismissed it. "It's theater," one older prisoner said. "They want us to admire them." But Voss couldn't dismiss the details. Theater didn't smell like popcorn and lilacs. Theater didn't have children arguing over who got the biggest piece of candy. Theater didn't have tired soldiers smiling at the sound of music like they'd survived something and wanted to keep living anyway. Over the next weeks, it happened again and again. Parades for returning units, fundraisers, county fairs, Independence Day rehearsals. The camps sat close enough to towns that the prisoners could hear the music drifting over fields and fences. At first, the sound made them stiffen. Years of military reflex pulled their spines straight. Then one day, during another work detail in town, an American captain noticed the German prisoners snap to attention when the band struck up a marching tune. He looked at them for a moment and said almost gently, "Relax. It's just music. Just music." For the Germans, music had never been just anything. It was always instruction, always command, always the state. But here belonged to the crowd. The crowd controlled the flag. The crowd controlled the celebration. Nobody demanded a salute. Nobody demanded worship. People clapped because they wanted to. They cheered because it felt good. They didn't march as if to conquer. They marched as if to belong. That difference started to change the prisoners in quiet ways. Men who had been hard and bitter became thoughtful. Some asked for more work details in town, not for the labor, but for the chance to see what normal life looked like. Others wrote letters home describing flags as decorations, not threats. Describing music as joy, not fear. One prisoner wrote, "In Germany, a parade meant judgment. Here, it means welcome." By late autumn, the prisoners stood along the fence line during a harvest festival, watching fireworks spill color across an American sky. Some clapped softly, some simply stared. And a few smiled before they caught themselves, embarrassed by their own expression. When repatriation orders finally came, Voss found himself listening for drums again as the train carried them toward the port. At a station stop, local teenagers practiced with instruments near the platform, warming up for another civic event. The Germans looked at each other and laughed quietly at the strange symmetry of it. As the train pulled away, Voss watched the town shrink behind him. On Main Street, flags hung again. Children ran between stalls. No soldiers, no shouting. Just peace with enough confidence to decorate itself in public. Years later, he would tell his family almost nothing about captivity, but he would describe the parades, the music, the careless optimism, the way a nation could celebrate in front of its enemies without flinching. "You cannot conquer a country that can laugh like that," he would say. Because the first American parade those German POWs witnessed wasn't meant for them. It was meant for a town welcoming its own sons home. But for the prisoners behind the slats of a transport truck, it became something else entirely. A lesson without lectures, a victory without humiliation, a reminder that freedom has a rhythm, and dictatorship doesn't dance. If this story surprised you, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. More untold World War II stories are coming.